We just want numbers. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster.
And this is what is phenomenal to me, is immigration was your president's #1 issue, overwhelmingly popular with the American people. But now it's overwhelmingly unpopular. And it's not because you are deporting dangerous people that everybody here wants out of our country. No, it's because you're going into our schools. You're terrorizing our children. You're detaining children.
This is your administration for FEMA response. This is President Trump's first administration. Which one would you like to have? I'm really glad that a lot of my Republican colleagues talked about the disaster that Biden and Mayorkas, your predecessor, created. It was absurd. You heard the things from Senator Britt, people that came over here who themselves were traumatized by the very people who then come to this country and traumatize American citizens. You heard Senator Schmidt saying the same thing. A lot of us are very frustrated with the disaster that President Biden left behind and a failed DHS. It's why I'm angry, and it's why I've been critical of you, Secretary Noem, because we're missing an opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons President Trump won a year and a half ago is because people were sick and tired of a Democratic administration's open border policy and allowing millions of people to come to this country, 1.7 million called gotaways. We don't even know where they are, but we know when you pay a premium to a cartel to get them into this country, they're bad people. Now, why have I been critical of Secretary Noem? Because I don't think we're focusing on, we have limited resources. ICE can't be everywhere at once. There's very few people in Capitol Hill that support law enforcement more than me, including the sworn ICE officers. In fact, I've just been told, fortunately, in about a week and a half, we're going to get a plaque on the wall over the Capitol, thanking the Capitol police officers and all the agencies that responded on January 6th. All those thugs have actually been pardoned, and yet we haven't thanked the Capitol police officers for their work here. So when I say I'm unapologetically pro-law enforcement, you can count in every single sworn officer in Homeland Security. So why am I disappointed with Secretary Noem? Because we're not going after enough people who did this damage at the expense of running numbers that Stephen Miller wants out of the White House. We just want numbers. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens. I could talk about the culture that's been created here with Stephen Miller aiding and abetting. I heard first reports that he was the one that said it was a domestic terrorist situation where 2 people lost their lives in Minneapolis. I've heard that report. Maybe you can refute it. I don't know that we'll have time for you to respond because I'm giving you a performance evaluation here. I'm not looking for a response. And I'm saying, Ms. Noem, that time after time after time I've been disappointed. But before I get back to looking at the vicious people that did this damage to these families, I want to talk a minute about FEMA. You have a policy right now that anything over $100,000 has to go through your desk for approval. I asked my staff, because I'm a management consultant, I don't try to do cheap shots in here, but the facts do not lie. This is your administration for FEMA response. This is President Trump's first administration. Which one would you like to have? If you're a state that has a $60 billion disaster, your biggest disaster in South Dakota that I can tell that when you were an elected official was about $500 million. So 1/100th of this single storm where thousands of people are hurting in North Carolina and you're just barely catching up. This is what competent FEMA leadership looks like. This is what incompetent FEMA leadership looks like. And people are hurting in Western North Carolina from the most significant storm they've ever experienced. This is what we need more of. I'm convinced you can't do it. If you're requesting a review of $100,000 and up, then it begs the question, why? Why would you be involved in that? Why would that be a policy? And in a minute, I'll ask about some people that are involved, some special government employees. Why are they involved in it? Thank you.
Senator,
no,
that
you can finish
that $100,000 only had to do.
And I will hold the clock until I finish.
Okay.
The bottom line is, I've done the analysis. And you can say whatever you want to. I've worked with a Democrat governor. I've worked with a Republican governor. I've worked with fiscal research. We have people contacting my office now to get the information to better understand the failure of this department. You failed at FEMA. And in fact, if I get to it, actually, why don't I cover this right now? The Homeland Security Act of 2002 expressly prohibits the Secretary of Homeland Security from restricting or diverting FEMA resources from the agency's mission. Based on your disaster response, the chart that I just showed you, I have reason to believe that you're violating the law, either knowingly or unknowingly. So I'll be asking and getting a submission to the record, submitting a question for the record, what the total amount of FEMA reimbursements are currently being held by DHS, awaiting for final approval. Held by DHS, awaiting for final approval for an agency that you should not be obstructing the disbursement on. I'm going to give you time to answer to it under penalty of perjury so that we can get it right. Now, going back to Minneapolis, why can't we just say we made a mistake? I will ask you one question, if you can just give me a quick response. Who does Tom Homan work for? You or the president?
The president.
Okay. Why is that? Because I believe the president recognized that you weren't getting it done in Minneapolis, and you're putting us further away from pointing to this. We're beginning to get the American people to think that deporting people is wrong. It's the exact opposite. The way you're going about deporting them is wrong. The fact that you can't admit to a mistake, which looks like under investigation, is going to prove that Miss Good and Mr. Pretty probably should not have been shot in the face and in the back. Law enforcement needs to learn from that. You don't protect them by not looking after the facts. Not only should the FBI be investigating it, but every single law enforcement agency in that jurisdiction should be invited to it, so our law enforcement officers do not have this pall cast upon them. One of the reasons why ICE officers are having threats, and damn the people that threaten ICE officers, because so many of them are doing a good job, is because you've cast a pall on them by acting like we should investigate things differently. Officer-involved shootings have a formula that we should go through every time. And we're not going through that formula. As a matter of fact, in Ms. Good's case, I think that they were even saying that maybe there wasn't even a need to do it in the DOJ. I hope that that's changed. But I'm telling you, it was a civil rights review. I saw your frown. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But originally, Blanche said there wouldn't be an investigation. Folks, law enforcement, we've got to have their back. We've got to make it clear when they make a mistake, then they get corrected for it. But you don't walk away from it, and you've done it too many times. Now, Secretary, I read your book last week. And honestly, some of the parts of it impressed me, but some of it distresses me. And I'll give you a good example of one that does. The passage where you talk about killing a dog that was 14 months old. I train dogs, all right? And you are a farmer. You should know better. You should know that if you're going out to a hunting lodge and you're putting pheasants out and you're putting dogs out, you don't take a puppy out there. A 14-month-old dog is basically a teenager in dog years. You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time in training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. It's in your book. We could play it if we had time. At that same lunch hour, you killed a goat. And you killed the goat because you said it was behaving badly. You are a farmer. You don't castrate a goat. They behave badly. You should have probably done that before. But my point is, those are bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened up in Minneapolis. I expect we're an exceptional nation. And one of the reasons we're exceptional is we expect exceptional leadership. And you've demonstrated anything but that in the time that I've seen you responding to the emergency in North Carolina and across the Southeast, and acknowledging when mistakes are made, and speaking too soon for the expedient of social media or whatever it is. I'll leave you with this, Ms. Noem. I'm expecting answers to Charlotte's Web. I requested it a month ago. That was one of the investigations in Charlotte, 20 minutes from where I live. All I asked for, if it had to be anonymized, was information so that I could determine if your hit rate is right. I want to find more of those people, and I want to detain fewer of the others. And Mr. Chair, in my remaining time, I have a lot to go. But I want to submit this letter from the Office of Inspector General that cites 10 different instances under Ms. Noem's leadership where they've been misled and not allowed to pursue investigations that they think are critically important. Does anybody have any idea how bad it has to be for the OIG in this agency to come out and do this publicly? That is stonewalling, that's a failure of leadership, and that is why I've called for your resignation. And if I don't get an answer to these questions, I don't want an applause. Please don't do that for me. If I don't get an answer to these questions, if I don't get an answer that you've had a month to respond to, and the remaining ones, as of today, I'll be informing leadership that I'm putting a hold on any en bloc nominations until I get a response. And in 2 weeks, if I don't get a response, I'm going to deny quorum and markup in as many committees as I can until I get a response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now it's Senator Booker's turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, you're in charge of your agency. The buck stops with you, correct?
I'm in charge of my agency, what?
The buck stops with you,
Yes, correct.
And you had to swear an oath to the Constitution before you took this job, right?
Correct.
So one of the most sacrosanct ideals of our nation, enshrined in our Constitution, is freedom, is liberty. Mm-hmm. It is an idea that the government has a very high standard should they take away liberty and freedom from an American citizen. How many U.S. citizens has DHS detained as of last October?
Senator, if you're talking about detained and arrested, is that those that have been violating and obstructing our law enforcement operations? Is that what you're referencing? Because it could be hundreds and hundreds. We have faced violent riots across the country,
you are
specifically in Portland and in
the only
Minneapolis.
people you've detained are committing crimes, but you and I both know
No,
that's
I
not
haven't
true.
said that. I didn't
so
say
then
that. I
how
asked
many
which ones you
people
were referencing.
have you detained?
I can't give you an accurate number because we've literally detained and arrested many for those obstruction of law enforcement operations, and
So
also
public
others
records,
that had probable
let me tell you
cause,
what my staff researched.
and then released
May,
once
may I,
they're-
may I
yes.
continue? Public records are showing that over 170 incidents of your agency unlawfully taking away the liberties and freedoms of American citizens. This includes 20 children, 20 American kids that your agency detained. How long can your agency detain an American citizen?
We don't detain children and separate them from their parents. Those parents have chosen
You're telling me
to
under
keep their
oath
child
right now.
with
Hold on.
them.
I just want to be clear. You're telling me under oath right now that your agency has not detained American children.
Those parents have chosen to keep their children with them. We don't separate families
So-
like the
so
Biden
hold on.
administration
Let me
did.
continue.
We keep them
Let me-
together, and parents have
please
the
let me
option
continue.
on if they want their child with
How
them
long
or
do
not with them.
detentions last when you detain an American citizen? How long do they last?
We don't detain American citizens, and if there's
well,
probable cause.
Let me give you, because you are not speaking truthfully under oath. Isaiah Pena Salcedo, a U.S. citizen living in California, was detained more than 70 hours, almost 3 days, even after he showed ICE agents his passport. My colleague, Senator Blumenthal, gave you example after example. He brought people here who had something else we Americans consider sacrosanct, our home, our property. Your masked agents jumping out of unmarked cars have broken into, considerable property damage occurring, into American citizens' homes. Case after case of this, and you sit here before me and claim the buck stops with you, but you don't even know the names of these individuals. I ran New Jersey's largest municipal police department. When my officers engaged in misconduct, you can be damn well sure I knew about it and I investigated it. And yet you have situations where your officers are violating the sanctity of people's homes, arresting and detaining them and holding their children, and you're acting as if you don't know about it and saying that under oath. Miramar Martinez, who is here right now, on her way to church, an American citizen going to church, not just to worship, but to donate clothing. Your officers shot her multiple times. The case was thrown out of court, and you represent here that you don't know about it. In New Jersey, are you aware of your officers' activities in places like schools? Are you aware of your officers' activities at our public schools?
Sir, we don't go into schools and do targeted law enforcement operations. We do targeted law enforcement operations like other agencies
So you're
and law
telling me that
enforcement
ICE
do.
officers entered the grounds of a high school in Minneapolis, that's a fact. Elementary school children in New Jersey are terrified of your agents. When they came upon a school bus stop, they fled. Another school, a higher education, Columbia University, your agents reportedly lied to students, told them they were searching for a missing person to gain access to private spaces, to non-public areas of campus. Secretary Noem, these are kids. They're terrified in our communities. How do you think that affects them when children in my state go running, fleeing, and often you all pursue children, throwing them to the ground, getting on their backs, putting them in handcuffs? I want to talk to you about this incredible empire of for-profit companies that are profiting at rates we've never seen, and the way you're using money. Let's drill down on the warehouses that DHS has been buying over the last several months, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Are you familiar with the acquisition of a warehouse DHS recently bought in Roxbury Township, New Jersey?
Yes.
You are familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. I'm
Do you
familiar
know
that
how much you spent for it?
No, sir, I do not.
$129.3 million. Do you know how much it was assessed for in New Jersey?
Sir, we're purchasing centers across the country to build efficiency into our detention system.
Efficiency to
so that
me,
we
as
can,
a person who's run tight budgets before and had taxpayer dollars, you paid $129.3 million for a facility in my state that was assessed at less than half of that, at $62 million. To work for a president that says he's a great deal maker, I can't believe he thinks that you're a great deal maker. But what's worse than that is that the Roxbury Township Council, comprised entirely of Republicans, voted unanimously early this year to oppose that facility. My office tried to facilitate a meeting between DHS and local officials so that ICE could hear their concerns, yet DHS did not even respond. That is unacceptable, that you all would enter a town. You wouldn't even follow environmental reviews or have conversations with local officials about the resources, from emergency resources to fire resources and more, that you're going to pull down. You didn't even have a conversation. Secretary Noem, do you comply with court orders?
yes, we do comply
Your
with
agency
court
complies
orders.
with court orders.
Yes, we comply
That,
with federal
again,
court
you were
orders.
saying under oath that you do, and yet we know in January the chief judge, Republican appointed for the Federal District of Minnesota, found that ICE had violated nearly 100 court orders since January 1st alone. In my state of New Jersey, last month, the chief of staff to Deputy Attorney General admitted in my state that in the New Jersey District Court that the government had violated 52 separate court orders, all involving cases where immigrants successfully challenged the legality of their detention. So this, again, is a constitution that you swore an oath to, and one of the most important ideals is that no one is above the law. You are violating the separation of powers, violating court orders, and routinely violating the civil rights of Americans. This is a reckless and out-of-control agency that you are responsible for. You seem to have no situational awareness whatsoever of some of the most egregious examples of Americans being completely attacked, violated, undermined in accordance with our laws by their own government. And this is what is phenomenal to me, is immigration was your president's #1 issue, overwhelmingly popular with the American people. But now it's overwhelmingly unpopular. And it's not because you are deporting dangerous people that everybody here wants out of our country. No, it's because you're going into our schools. You're terrorizing our children. You're detaining children. You're arresting Americans. You're breaking into our homes. You're terrorizing our streets. You're violating our rights to peacefully protest again and again and again.
None of
and then
that
when
is
a
true.
court tells you
None
to
of
stop,
that is true.
and then when a court
You are
tells
trying
you to stop,
to impede
you
us
violate
from enforcing
judges'
the law
orders. Not in
and
a
getting
partisan
dangerous
way,
criminals off of our streets
Republican-appointed
so
and
we don't have more
Democratic-appointed.
families like the ones that are
Don't
sitting
sit
behind
there
me.
and tell me that
Lost
you are
their children, are
responsible
gone forever.
for the running of your agency when you're not even aware. Either you are utterly incompetent or you are violating laws with impunity. You should step down from your position. If you don't, you should be removed by this president. And if not, Congress should impeach you.
Yeah, I appreciate the
Lee.
encouragement.